Hello everyone and welcome back to another average review. And today we're taking a look at a 2-pack that I've seen a couple people pretty mixed on. The Amazon exclusive Extremis Iron Man versus Mandarin 2-pack. Now, taking a look at the box, and it's a pretty standard Marvel Legends 2-pack window box. We have Iron Man and Marvel Legends logos here, the Extremis Iron Man and Mandarin names here. On this side, we have some really cool artwork of Iron Man and the Mandarin, but there's actually a problem with all of the artwork used for Iron Man on this box. It's not of Iron Man in the Extremis armor. This is actually the Pentagon armor that I believe was used before the Extremis armor. You can tell it's different because, well, the arc reactor is a pentagon. It's in the name instead of a triangle like the Extremis armor. And the helmet has a different design. What's even weirder about this is that Marvel Legends previously released a version of the Iron Man Pentagon armor in the retro-carded Iron Man line. And they previously did release an Extremis Iron Man, but we'll get to that when we talk about the sculpting of this Iron Man. I will say though, no problems with the images of the Mandarin. They're all pretty good art and accurate to the figure inside the box. And the Iron Man art is mostly accurate. The Pentagon armor does share a lot of details with the Extremis armor, but yeah, that is a problem that they didn't pick the right armor for the artwork on the box. But it's ultimately minor since I'm just going to be throwing this box away anyways. So hey, let's finally get these figures out of the box and see if they're as good, or I guess in Mandarin's case, as mediocre as a lot of people are saying they are. Alright, getting these two out of the box, and well, let's start off by looking at the sculpting and paintwork on Iron Man, since, I mean, he's the title character. Also, I just want to mention, this Iron Man is really dang tall compared to the Mandarin, which I guess makes sense considering he's in a suit of armor. Alright, starting off with the head sculpt, and, damn, sorry, Tony, that's actually really distracting. Let me just put your helmet on, maybe? Now that's a lot better. Alright, taking a look at this Extremis Iron Man, and there is a fair bit of reuse from the previous Extremis Iron Man, albeit I don't have that original figure, so my guesses as to what are reuse are just that, guesses, but I believe the shoulders and the entirety of the arms along with the entirety of the legs and the actual head sculpt are reused, while the pelvis, midsection of the torso, upper torso, rotator cuffs and neck piece are all new pieces, along with the unmasked Tony head sculpt that came on the figure just straight out of the box. But that's not important since, I mean, I'm definitely going to keep the helmet on this guy, just being honest, and yeah, the sculpting on this guy is really, really good. Looking at, the helmet, it's a pretty good representation of the actual Extremis Iron Man. Obviously, not the Pentagon armor that they showed on the box for some reason. Yeah, I like the fully white eyes along with the black line work, near the eyes and on the mouth. There's a lot of detailing, even if it isn't filled in with like a black wash or just like a regular paint job. That detail goes down to the actual torso and, of course, on the back, where there is a lot of detail, and also sort of imitation musculature with the plating of the armor, which I always like with Iron Man armors. It looks really cool. The actual, unibeam right there does have a bit of paint detailing on it. It's not just a flat white or yellow. I like the shades of red and gold. They're a bit muted, but that is definitely appropriate for, the Extremis armor. There's actually a bit of yellow right here in this part of the, gauntlet, and the same actually goes for the inside of the open hands. They have a bit of yellow for the glowing, hand beams, which I think is a pretty neat detail. Moving down the legs, and they actually aren't as detailed as the arms and torso, but they still look pretty nice. Same with the two-toed feet. I'm not exactly sure why Iron Man built toes into his armor, but I don't know, I ain't gonna judge him too hard. He could probably blow up my house with just one repulsor blast. So, yeah, I do like the paintwork and sculpting on this Iron Man, and all the new bits of articulation really don't obtrude in on the sculpting, which is a pretty nice touch. Now let's talk about the other figure in the set, one of Iron Man's oldest enemies, the Mandarin, and I do gotta admit, I don't know a lot about the Mandarin in the comics, besides the fact that, well, he's an enemy of Iron Man, and he's got 10 super powerful rings. But that's kind of it. So if I get anything wrong, apologies, I'm not too familiar with the character. But what I do know is that this is our first comic book Mandarin in the Marvel Legends line since the Toy Biz Marvel Legends Mandarin from the Face Off line in 2006. So it has been nearly 20 years. And a lot of people are a bit disappointed in this figure considering it's the suited look and not the, grandiose green robes that he's more known for, which is understandable, but I mean, this is, something directly from the comics, and I'm pretty sure from the Extremis era, so it definitely feels fitting to pack that in with, well, an updated Extremis Iron Man. And I will say, the actual suited body doesn't look that bad. He's even got a bit of sculpting to give the illusion of him wearing 2 suit jackets over his button-up shirt. Granted, it's all just one piece. There's not actually a second, suit jacket under there, but it is a pretty neat effect. I like the tie swooping in the wind, and this is a newer suited body, so he is pinless, but overall a pretty bland body mold. The head is pretty good, though. It's got that nice face printing technology. He's got a really just realistic looking face, which I think is cool. I love his goatee and that super long hair he's got. It looks pretty cool, honestly. Now, unfortunately, the default hands he comes packed with don't have his 10 rings. He does have an alternate pair of hands with them, but I don't get why all of his alternate hands don't have them, considering that, they're his entire, power. He's got 10 rings. I don't know. Maybe this is an actual plot detail from the Extremis comics where he isn't always wearing them, but like I said, not too familiar with the Mandarin as a character, but I think this is an alright looking figure. But the question is, how do this Mandarin and Iron Man stack up in terms of articulation? Starting off with the head articulation, and Iron Man actually has 2 advantages over the Mandarin. One, he doesn't have super long hair like Mandarin does, and he's got another disc hinge at the base of the neck. I say disc hinge instead of ball joint since it only really goes back and forth and turns all the way around instead of being able to tilt. Point is, though, Mandarin basically can't look up at all, but with Iron Man's 2 joints in the neck, he can look up really far, which is great for flying characters like him. Another joint that Iron Man has that the Mandarin doesn't is a rotator cuff. I saw a lot of people saying this Iron Man has butterfly joints, but no, it's actually a rotator cuff so you can, wobble his shoulders all the way around. Now, both Iron Man and the Mandarin do have swivel hinge shoulders, which do allow them to spin their arms all the way around and lift their arms up, but their arm raises are actually equal since Iron Man has those bulky shoulder pads that get in the way of articulation, even if he does have rotator cuffs and Mandarin doesn't. Of course, they both have bicep swivel, which lets you turn their arms all the way around. And double jointed elbows. Mandarin actually has the better arm bend since, his arms are a lot more skinny than Iron Man's. But both of them do have the Marvel Legends style wrists that spin around and hinge up or down. A place where these two differ, though, is the torso articulation. Mandarin has the standard Marvel Legends waist swivel and ab crunch, while Iron Man has the diaphragm joint and waist crunch that figures like Renew Your Vows Spider-Man have. Unfortunately, Iron Man actually has the worst hunch forward, even though I heated the figure's torso up with hot water, and I know that he can get a deeper hunch forward, but the actual waist crunch is just fighting me for some reason. If you guys have any ideas how to fix this, then please let me know. It would be very appreciated. But hey, in terms of the arch back, Iron Man remains undefeated, thanks to Mandarin having a long trench coat that blocks him from arching back. Thanks to that waist swivel, Mandarin does get turning all the way around, but Iron Man's diaphragm joint lets him turn all the way around and get a good amount of tilt side to side. But they both do have ball-jointed hips, which can kick forward about the same, about 90 degrees for both. They also both do a pretty decent split, with Iron Man's maybe being a bit better. They also both have thigh cut, which of course lets you spin their legs all the way around. Iron Man's is cleverly hidden with, the transition between the gold part of the legs down to the big red boots. They also both have double jointed knees with pretty equivalent bends, although Iron Man's may be ever so slightly better. But there is one thing that Mandarin has that Iron Man doesn't, and that's actually ankle rotation, which is pretty uncommon for Marvel Legends, and I was surprised to find out that this figure has just that. But both do have the regular Marvel Legends ankle joints that hinge forward and back, and pivot side to side. So overall, pretty alright articulation on both, although I am pretty impressed with Iron Man's, especially for a bulky armor like the Extremis armor, with all the extra details and especially the bulky gloves and boots. I am also especially impressed with how high he can lift his head, which is really good for a flying character like Iron Man. But there's more than just articulation or paintwork and sculpting. Let's also see how well this Iron Man and Mandarin 2-pack compares with other Marvel Legends. I'm actually mainly going to be focusing on 2000s era Avengers figures, like from the, I believe 2005 New Avengers run, which did feature Iron Man during the Civil War era, which was during the time when he wore the Extremis armor. Alright, now finally moving on to the figure comparisons, and let's of course start with the standard male and female comparisons, Renew Your Vows Spider-Man and Spinneret. And as you can see, Iron Man is still a bit taller than Renew Your Vows Spidey, who is also a bit taller than your standard Legends, so yeah, this Iron Man is a fairly tall figure for a standard Legends. For another Spidey, though, here they are with the old retro-carded Spider-Man, since I feel this Spider-Man is actually very close in design to the one featured in the New Avengers comic series. Speaking of that comic series, let's also bring out both of the versions of Cap from that comic run. The Steve Rogers Cap from the Gamerverse 2-pack, and a new addition to my collection, the Bucky Barnes Captain America from the Avengers 60th Anniversary Collection. If you want to see a video on this guy right here, then maybe leave a comment down below, since I feel like that would be a pretty interesting review. For some more New Avengers team members, we have the astonishing X-Men version of Wolverine and the live-action Netflix version of Luke Cage, since that's pretty similar to the costume he was wearing. Well, costume is a strong word for the outfit, but what he was wearing during the New Avengers comic run. Now, the Iron Fist and Luke Cage 2-pack does come with a comic version of that outfit, which would be more accurate, but I unfortunately don't have that 2-pack. Rounding out the members of the new Avengers that I actually have figures of, we have Clint Barton, Hawkeye, even though technically at this time in the comics he was under the Ronin identity, but Hasbro hasn't made an updated one yet, so I don't have that design for Hawkeye. And also my Kit Bash of the Sentry, who is basically the All-Father Wave Sentry with a cloth cape and the head from the Commander Steve Rogers figure. For some more traditional Avengers members that didn't make it onto the new Avengers team, at least at first, we have Black Widow and Doctor Strange. For some more members of the team that didn't get onto the new Avengers, though, we have Black Panther and Scarlet Witch, along with the mighty Thor, and of course, the strongest Avenger of them all, the Incredible Hulk. Now, moving on to some villains and the unfortunately very small number of Iron Man villain figures I actually have. First of all, we have the massive MODOK, the towering Crimson Dynamo Build-A-Figure, the comic Ironmonger Build-A-Figure, which was the first usage of a couple parts that the Crimson Dynamo Build-A-Fig would later reuse. And also the movie version of Ironmonger, which is a great transition to the movie version of the Mandarin, or, well, the fake version of the Mandarin from Iron Man 3. Now, a lot of people complained that this Mandarin isn't in his more classic green robed look. Well, I want to try a head swap between these two to see what that would look like. I also decided to put the movie head on the comic body just to see how that looks, and I gotta say, both of these do look pretty decent. I, of course, especially love the comic head on the movie body, but the issue is, because of his long hair and the sort of hood on his robe on, the back there, he's kind of perpetually looking down a little, which is a little annoying. But for a comparison that I think is pretty important with the Extremis armor is Norman Osborn as the Iron Patriot from the Cabal 3-pack. Simply because, well, the Iron Patriot suit is a modified version of the Extremis armor, and as you can see, they share a couple parts. At least, it shares a couple parts with the original Extremis armor figure. Mainly not the one with the new torso, but you can see a lot of the similar sculpted differences in the torso still. I also wanted to say, this is actually some pretty good custom potential if you have extras of both of these. Just swap the hips, shoulders, and upper torso onto, well, the waist and ab pieces on this figure, and you have a nearly finished, super articulated Iron Patriot. Granted, I don't think you'd actually be able to transplant the rotator cuffs from this one onto this torso, considering that, well, this one is specially engineered. Same with the neck articulation, but I don't know, I still think it would be pretty neat to give this figure a waist crunch. Unfortunately, both these figures are pretty expensive to get loose, so that probably ain't happening anytime soon for me. But hey, as is tradition, here's the Marvel Legends Extremis Iron Man and Mandarin 2-pack with Hit Monkey and Goliath. Alright, now throughout the video we've taken a very, very long look about the aspects of just the base figures. But the question is, what kind of accessories do these guys come with? Well, out of the box, they both have a pair of open hands, Iron Man's of course being for his repulsor blasts. But they also come with an alternate pair of fist hands. I'd like to call special attention to the Mandarins because they actually have the 10 rings and they do have a bit of paint on them to add some color, which is pretty nice. Mandarin also comes with another pair of hands, which is these outstretched claw hands. Like I said, I don't know much about the Mandarin, so I assume this is just something he can do. But what I will say, these claw hands I think fit fairly well with the Mandarin's alternate head, which is a gray-haired, much older-looking screaming head. Like I said, I don't know much about the Mandarin, but I mean, this head probably means a lot to the more diehard Mandarin fans. But Mandarin isn't the only figure in this box with a scary, absolutely horrifying head sculpt, since Iron Man also comes with an alternate head. Or more so, I should say that the helmeted head is the alternate head. Because I'm sure that you saw that the head that came on this figure out of the box was the bald Tony Stark head. I have no clue why he's wearing a wetsuit head. Once again, probably has to do with the Extremis storyline. But I will say, I kind of just wish this was a normal, modern Tony Stark head sculpt. They kind of did a similar thing with the Hulkbuster figure, where they had a really good-looking Tony head sculpt, but he had the little bits of metal around his chin so it wouldn't work as a regular unmasked Tony Stark. I kind of wish I could just take the blank chin and face of this one and put on, the ears and hair of the Hulkbuster alternate head. But hey, that's not all the accessories these guys come with, since they both come with some pretty nifty effect pieces. You know what, let's actually put the helmet back on Tony for this one. Iron Man, of course, comes with some pretty standard translucent repulsor blast effects, but I will say these ones are pretty cool since they fade from a translucent yellow just to a translucent white as as you go down the effect. But Mandarin just comes with some pretty standard, flame effects for his arms. If you've had one of the figures of the Human Torch, you've probably seen these effect pieces before. But they're still pretty decent effects. And I gotta say, minus the bald Tony Stark head, this 2-pack does have a pretty decent selection of accessories. There's only 2 things I would have wanted with this set. The one I want most is just to replace the weird wetsuit Tony head with a more traditional, unmasked Tony Stark head. And also maybe add in 2 more of these, yellow to white blast effect pieces, since I think they're pretty cool and I'd like to have them in both, have the option to have them in both, blasting out of the repulsors and also, jetting out of his feet. But I'm pretty satisfied with the Mandarin's accessory selection, especially the alternate, older looking head. So with all that out of the way, that just leaves 2 final questions. What's the price on this 2-pack? And also my final thoughts. Now, this 2-pack originally retailed on Amazon, since it is an Amazon exclusive, for $50, but it's currently going for $58. Now, in my opinion, I'd say this 2-pack is definitely worth the $50. I don't think the Mandarin figure is as bad as people say it is, or, well, as mediocre as people say it is, and the Iron Man is amazing. Now, for what it's currently going for, which is $58, that's a little more mixed. I will say, though, this does have a similar amount of reuse to things like the Gamerverse 2-packs, like the Wolverine and Silver Samurai one, or the Cap and Venom one, where we have one figure with a pretty good amount of new tooling, and one figure that's mostly reuse with just a new head. And this one does come with a lot of more worthwhile accessories. Alternate heads for both figures, effect pieces for both, and a pair of alternate hands for one, and 2 pairs for the other. I don't know, I feel like that's a pretty decent package. even though I kinda already answered it when discussing the price, I suppose I should get my final thoughts out of the way too. I really love the Iron Man in this set. That's pretty obvious. That's the reason why most people, buy this 2-pack, and it's pretty easy to see why. It's a super beloved armor from the comics that a lot of people have nostalgia for. It's painted and sculpted very well, and the updated articulation is really, really good without intruding too much on the actual sculpt. Also, the accessories are pretty good. I mean, there's just the standard, open hands, blast effects, and fists. But unfortunately, I feel like they sort of dropped the ball with the alternate head, since it's not really a normal Tony Stark unmasked head, and it's instead the weird looking wetsuit one, which I've mentioned plenty of times, not too big a fan of. I will say, the Mandarin is actually a surprisingly decent figure. Obviously, the head sculpt, both the regular one and the extra one do look pretty dang decent. I also like the ringed hands and the claw hands and the little, arm effect pieces. But his articulation is more limited than Iron Man's in terms of the head articulation and also the torso. And plus, since he's just a figure on a suited body with a pretty unique set of hands and also his head, he is ultimately a fairly generic looking figure, which is accurate to the look they base this figure on, but still not as exciting as Iron Man. So overall, taking everything into account, the accessories, the sculpting, paintwork, price, and articulation, I'm going to give the Marvel Legends Extremis Iron Man vs. Mandarin 2-pack an 8 out of 10. Pretty dang good, especially for someone getting into the Marvel Legends line. But nothing too exciting, minus a few new points of articulation on Iron Man. But hey, tell me what you think in the comments below. Was I wrong about saying the Mandarin isn't exactly as mediocre as people say? Tell me your thoughts. And hey, if you're still here, first of all, thank you very much for watching, and second of all, have a great day, 'cause you deserve it. Bye-bye!